Hi everyone. Thank you for joining me live on LinkedIn. I'm so excited. This is my last live on LinkedIn this year. It's been a really amazing year. I mean, lots and lots have happened this year, ups and downs, but I'm just glad to be able to sit here and smile and do another LinkedIn live. And today I'm with Alice Arandia, and she is absolutely amazing. We have been connected on LinkedIn for a little while, and then I got to meet her a few weeks ago, and I'm just in awe of everything that she's done and her career history up to this point. So I thought it'd be really good to get on a live and, in particular, talk about cultural differences and how it impacts business, because Alice has done a lot of work around that. So, without further ado, Alice, hi, tell us a little bit
Hiya,
about
Kerry.
yourself.
Hi.
Hi,
Nice
hi.
to see you, and thank you so much for having me on. That's really nice. Thank you. I'm in awe of all you do. I followed you for a while, so um, thank you for that introduction.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background? So I know now you do great stuff with helping businesses that are going international and helping them with those kind of partnerships and collaboration. But you have an interesting background with culture and even more before that. Do you want to give us a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm originally from Aberdeen, here in Scotland. I grew up here, but at 20 years old, I emigrated to Bolivia in the heart of South America, and that that started my passion for culture. So I'm part of a multicultural family now, and since then I've lived in Trinidad and Tobago, Ghana, Kazakhstan most recently, and now full circle back here in Scotland again. So yeah, that's
Fantastic. And I think when we talked about this a few weeks ago, we had quite a few similarities. So I'm interested in culture as well because it had such an impact in my life, especially my upbringing. Obviously, born in Nigeria, then I lived in the Middle East between the ages of 11 and 16. And I still find that those years have had probably the most impact on me in terms of just understanding all the cultures, being
yeah.
immersed in an environment where you're different, everyone else is different, and really that kind of understanding and adaptation really
Yeah,
in
so
that
so you're
environment.
you're the classic third culture kid.
Yeah,
That is what they call a third culture kid, which is really interesting. I think it creates such a rounded character. It's so important to be exposed to different cultures, and we we're not our own culture. It's really good to be aware of our own culture. I think that's the first step,
yeah.
and then to be able to understand other people's cultures. And sometimes people don't want to talk about differences, but I think it's great. What makes us unique is that we're all different, and I think that's amazing. That's what I love about culture.
I know, and you can usually tell when you start engaging with people who have lived in different cultures or are part of a
Absolutely.
multicultural community. You can tell compared to someone who hasn't, and I feel definitely blessed for that.
Mhm.
Although sometimes it does make me quite strange. So my friends sometimes I'll be talking to them, especially in Aberdeen, where I've picked up a little bit of the Aberdonian accent. It's not very strong, but it's a little bit there. But I went to an American school when I live in the Middle East, and so I find when I'm talking to an American, this strong American twang just rears his head, and my friends are looking at me like, "What are you doing?" And then my mom rings, and then I start talking to her, and I sound Nigerian completely, and they're just like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?"
It's interesting. Accent is so important. In the UK, accent is what makes you can fit in, you integrate if you have the right accent. And that's something I've suffered with because I grew up in Medicuta in a rural area of outside Aberdeen. I don't I, I don't have people laugh. Anybody watching this that knows me will be like, yeah, no, she doesn't have the local Aberdonian accent. And people will say, you don't sound Scottish. But then go down to England and people go, oh, you sound so Scottish. So
I
it's
know.
really, really difficult. The funny thing is that I learned Spanish with a local accent to the area that my husband's from. So people laugh at that because they say I speak Spanish with a local accent. It's accent is it's part of our culture. It's we make a lot of assumptions based on somebody's accent, which is
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
yeah.
and that's a really good point. And I think accent's important, but it's just a really small part of this whole cultural difference, isn't it? And some of what you've studied, and I would love you to delve a little bit more into your study of culture. So obviously you've had this experience of a multicultural background and being in a multicultural family, but you've actually done some work on culture.
Hmm.
Tell us a little bit about some of that
Yeah,
work.
so it was really, I had an excellent tutor when I was at RG. I went back to RGU in 2009, 2008, 2009. And I was doing some research into team integration for new recruits. And he guided me, he says, you need to look into, we're looking at Aberdeen companies and oil companies, specifically multicultural teams, the influence of culture. And I was like, I mean, although I'd lived in a multicultural environment for so long, it just amazed me that I hadn't really thought about it academically and I hadn't ever looked at it, you know, the theory of culture.
Mm.
And that for me was such an eye-opener when I started reading about culture and looking at like Hofstede's work on the dimensions of culture, and Edward Hall way back 50 years ago, he did a lot of research as well. It's fascinating. So I then went on to do through just open courses on anthropology, social anthropology, and just blew me away. Just thinking, how have I not thought more about this? And it starts making you look at your own identity. Who am I? What has made me who I am? And I think that I'm a product of growing up in Scotland. I'm very Scottish. I'm proud to be Scottish. I'm proud to be British. But I'm also a product of all the other cultures I've lived in. And I've probably, we do change. People say, oh, you shouldn't change. You do. We evolve according to our surroundings. So I'm now a mixture of all these different cultures I've lived in. And I'm proud of that. I'm very happy with that.
Amazing. And yeah, I'm very similar with you. I'm proud of all that I am, and now
Mhm,
living in Aberdeen, Scotland for 17, 18 years. Again, it's another culture, and my children have a different experience of culture because, they've been born and brought up here, and they will have a different lens to what I
mhm,
had. So I,
mhm,
I think it's such a fascinating subject. And going back to studying culture, I studied a little bit about culture when I did my MBA a few years ago, and I know that you've done some work in this area, even looking at businesses and how power, for instance, is perceived in an organization, and talking about power distance. For instance, in
mhm,
some cultures the boss is right up here, and
mhm,
like in Nigeria, you wouldn't call your boss by their first name, for
mhm,
instance. You
mhm,
would
mhm.
sir, or the most familiar you can get is like Mr., whatever the
Absolutely,
name
yeah.
is, and so on. And there's those differences. And if you're going into a new business environment and you don't understand things like that, you could end up in quite some trouble, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and this, I mean, like we do a lot of work with South American countries, companies, and in South America, it's you don't normally talk to somebody by their call or address somebody by their first name. You would call them. It's great if you don't remember names. I'm terrible for remembering names, so it's great. If they've got a degree, you call them licenciado or licenciada, or if they're engineers, you call them ingeniero, ingeniera, depending male or female. Um, so it can be very useful, but it's also for foreigners coming in, it can be strange. So
Mm.
a lot of expats that go and work, or especially British or American expats that go and work in South America, will say no, please don't address me by a title. Use my first name, thinking that's far more familiar because in the UK
Yeah.
that's normal for us. And you know you have to explain on both sides because from our point of view, it's unnecessary. We like more flat organizations, or we claim we do. That's a whole other topic. Because that then, in the other culture, can send a message of, yeah, we're now friends. We're on first name terms. And then people start crossing that, what we see as the border of, what is the right way to address somebody that's your colleague, not your friend. And it can cause all sorts of problems. I've seen
I
this
know.
time and time again because
I
then
can
people become
imagine.
too familiar, and then you'll have the expat manager saying, they're far too familiar with me. It's like, well, you've sort of almost encouraged that now by not wanting them to use the title because that's what they were used to using. So it can be very confusing, but it's all
Yeah.
a question of understanding it. Um, you can agree or disagree, it doesn't really matter, but you just need to respect different cultures and respect that this is the way it's done in this culture, and I'm going to adapt my management style according to the culture that I'm in. And open discussions, it's just when I most of my workshops, it's not me training everybody, because there is no right or wrong, and I wouldn't pretend to be an expert. What I'd like to do is facilitate conversations. Just talk, talk. If there's an issue, if somebody has an issue with somebody based on their, something they're doing, it can be a personality. It can be. We have to be so careful as well that we can't generalize. Oh, this culture does this culture does that, because we're all changing. The way the UK was 20 years ago isn't the same as it is now.
Mhm.
So cultures do change, people change, personalities change. Not don't change, but people's individual personalities are different within one culture. But it's just facilitating a conversation. Just communication is key. It's key
Yeah.
whether you're in the same culture or whether you're in a different culture. Communication, clear, open communication is just so important.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's the key thing there, because like you're saying, even in the same culture, it's easy to make assumptions about what
yeah.
people prefer, right? But people have different preferences. Just depends on what their background and what
Mhm.
they're used to. So I know that I'm, different in terms of, my preferences. Like, because of my upbringing, my dad was quite formal. And he went to school in Britain, and so there's a Britishness about him. So compared to like a typical Nigerian dad, he was different, and so our background is different. So I'm very comfortable with queuing up and please and
We all
thank
love a cue.
you and and all that kind of thing. And I struggled with that growing up, because in Nigeria, like the queue, like if you stood on the queue, like you're stupid, right? Because the queue is too long. So
Do you know, the
you
queue is just a fascinating aspect of British culture. I love a queue. I just think, to me, from my cultural perspective, through my cultural lens, a queue is it's just it's order, it's
it's
respect for
structure,
each
yeah,
other, it's
yeah.
structure. You know, that's me looking at it through my cultural lens. But if you talk to somebody, some South American, I mean, plenty of people love queues in different cultures, but
Mhm.
I've heard other people have given me different perspectives, what they see, and what they'll say is, yes, that's all very well, but they'll criticize us, or the British, for being too slow to react, we wait in turn. When we don't have that aggressive, let's go after, say we're going after a tender in business or something, you have to be more aggressive. In some cultures, they have that more sort of fight for, is that not fighting? It's not aggressive, but they are more competitive than we
Mhm.
are. They won't have that. They don't stand in the orderly queue. They haven't grown up with that culture of standing in orderly queue. And if there's something you need to obtain, you go after it.
Yeah.
And that filters down through culture. So it filters down in business. The way we behave in a business environment. Just, you can compare it to how we behave in a queue. It's just it's amazing.
I know, it's amazing, because I think we also talked about this a few weeks ago. I love a queue, but then when it comes to business, entrepreneurship, innovation, there's a disadvantage to being in the
Exactly.
queue, right?
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
part of the learning over the years is, just standing in line. Okay, makes you look really polite, but actually, maybe you need to take a different approach. And
Yeah.
I think it's
So
really about knowing when to step out of that queue, and maybe make eye contact with the cashier.
especially in sales, just standing there waiting for somebody to take their turn isn't going to help you in sales. Sometimes in sales you have to be more innovative. You have to find a way to get to the front, a way to um, push past others. It's a fact in sales.
It is, and I think it's that fine balance, isn't it? And really communication, understanding what will work in a certain culture, in a certain business environment. I'm not making those assumptions. We've got
Sorry,
one
say why
one
all the
viewer say, well,
Britishness?
I know, but sometimes it really helps though. That structure, I think, really helps. But I think when you're going into, if you're a British company, for instance, so if we take this to the next level, you're a British company, for instance, going into a new culture to work. So you're looking to
Hmm.
engage a client or you're partnering with a supplier and it's a different culture. It'd be great to hear from you, Alice, based on your work. So your work at Finch Global, some of the things that you found that British companies are maybe taking for granted or just making assumptions that have maybe caused issues later on. It'd be good to hear some of
Yeah,
those stories.
I mean, first of all, I would say that we have a great brand. Being British is has a value that we need to be proud of and that we need to take advantage of. So I think it's not all negative. So we're known for quality, for good service. So that's something that companies can build on when they take their business internationally. The problems I've seen are that we assume that that's going to be enough. That companies think, okay, well, we'll go in and we're a British company, so there's a slight arrogance possibly, that's going to be enough to get business. Nowadays, you go around the world, people are very professional everywhere. Don't underestimate the companies you're competing with, the local companies you're competing with. The local companies are very capable, very competent, very well qualified staff, and we all have access to all the tools that we need online to do great presentations. So go in with a great presentation, be well presented yourself, because especially in South America, and also in Asia as well, people tend to dress quite smartly for business. The turning up in jeans and a jumper may not go down well in a meeting. So look the part, be prepared, have all the information at your fingertips, have the well presented, and deliver. Not just what you say you can deliver, actually go in there and deliver a good service.
Yeah,
Or the product. I
absolutely.
mean, we work more in the service industry, but it can be products as well, obviously.
Yeah.
But like working like in trade shows, for example, international, if you go into South America, they tend to be social events as well as business events. So you need to go in there prepared for that, with good promotional gifts, with nice stand entertainment. A lot of the stands will have entertainment, they'll have food, drink.
Yeah.
It's much more sociable than what we're used to here. It's
Yeah.
not just a business event.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And a lot of these cultures, they want to get to know you before they actually
Yeah,
go into
yeah,
business with you. It's not
yeah,
unusual for you to be invited to their house and have a
absolutely. Yeah,
meal with
no,
their family and all that kind of thing.
no, absolutely. It's much more relationship based. So it's again going back to South America. Um, yeah, take people out for dinner. And the other thing is, this was something interesting. We were talking about rituals in social anthropology. Was people think, well, what rituals do we have in the UK? That the our round system in the UK, that's a ritual in our culture that we all accept, we all understand. You know how it works. You go to the pub, everybody buys a round of drinks.
Mhm, mhm.
In other cultures, that's not. So one of it, be aware of that when your people come here. They it's not that maybe they're just being stingy, they just don't understand that that's our culture. Explain it to them. But when you go abroad, if you're taking people out, you tend to pick up the bill.
Yeah,
So their clients are expecting to be wined and dined. um, and yet the relationship is very important. You can't just fly in for one day, have a meeting, and fly back out again. You need to go in, get to know people, often meet the family,
yeah.
go to their house. You may spend 2 or 3 days just socializing before you ever manage to get any business negotiation done. But it's going to be worthwhile long term.
Yeah, absolutely. You just reminded me of when I first came to the UK. So not when I came to live in Aberdeen, but just visiting. And I was visiting a friend. She was in school in Leicester, and I remember being really surprised when we all went out for a meal, and then after the meal, they started dividing up the bill. I mean, this was probably 20. 4 years ago or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we were divided, they were dividing up the bill. I was like, what are
Mm-hmm.
they doing? And they're dividing it up. And I was like, oh yeah, so that's £12.50. I was like, oh, what are we doing? Because in our culture, somebody just pays for everything,
Yes,
right? And
yeah, yeah.
it's almost like an honor. It's like the person
Mm-hmm.
who obviously deems themselves the richest or the most financially able would just say, oh, don't worry about it, and just pay for the whole bill. And it's like, oh, thank you. And so the first time I had that with this friend of mine who was at uni, and there were like eight of us, and they divided up the bill, and I was like, whoa. And it just felt a bit like, oh, harsh. And I think it was someone's birthday as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
I had this feeling like, well, it's your birthday and you invited me to a restaurant and now you want me to pay? Like, it didn't make any sense.
Just these little things. It's like, so if somebody moves into the office, you know, you're working in an office in, say, in Aberdeen, you're working in an office and somebody comes in from abroad, maybe just explain these little things to them that, you know, if you're going out, you're going to be expected to have some cash with you, or you know, don't be surprised if they ask you, don't take offense. That's the way we do things. And vice versa. If you're going to invite a large group, decide how many you're going to take out when you're abroad, because it may end up expensive.
Exactly. Because they wouldn't be expected to pay their part of the bill. So, no,
It's
that's
just
really,
these
really
little tiny
interesting.
things that seem
I know.
insignificant, but you know, they can make or break a, like you said, does it make or break a business agreement? Absolutely. Without a doubt, little silly little cultural misunderstandings can ruin a business agreement.
Yeah, yeah. We were also talking about, Alice, we're talking about some of the things around like just work practices. So some cultures where, it's email correspondence, and weekends are very well respected, holidays are respected, and people won't get in touch with you, or at least you're not expected to engage when there's a holiday and so on. And in some other cultures, the channels for communication might be quite different. You might end up getting a lot of WhatsApp messages, or they're texting you, they're phoning you on Christmas
Yeah.
Day, type of thing. Can you speak a little bit about that and what
Yeah, no, I
our
mean
businesses should
the
be
other thing,
considering?
to take into consideration is Christmas isn't celebrated everywhere. So you may have a client in a country where they're not celebrating Christmas, and that can be difficult for us to get our head around here. Um, and also there are in the oil and gas industry and in many industries, work doesn't stop. We've got a client that's working on Christmas Day. We've got projects going ahead on Christmas Day. So I mean, in the UK, yes, we tend to respect people's weekends, out of our office hours, and that's quite right. But there are times when you do have to interrupt these times. And certainly, yes, in again, I'm going back to South America because that's what the area we work in a lot. People use the phone a lot more than here. So people will pick up the phone and phone you rather than email you.
Mm.
They'll use WhatsApp, send you documents on WhatsApp, send you voice messages. They use that way more than here. Voice messages on WhatsApp. So yeah, we tend to try and encourage people to use email because personally I find it more formal. But having WhatsApp WhatsApp documents, you just end up losing control of the version. So I prefer to keep everything on the cloud, so we don't have different versions of documents flying around. But yeah, you have to adapt as well. If they're your client and they want to use WhatsApp a lot, then yeah, you
Yeah,
go
you
with
have to
it.
just
Yeah,
you have to go
yeah,
with it. Absolutely. I just want to thank everyone who's watching now, or if you're watching this later on, feel free to put a comment, put a question through. We've got maybe 5-10 minutes left. So if you've got any questions or comments for myself or Alice, please feel free to put that in. If we catch it later after the show, we will still respond to it in the comment thread. So do feel free to put your questions through. And I'm sure Alice would be happy to connect with people maybe on LinkedIn that maybe want to connect with her.
absolutely.
Um, Through the work that you're doing, Alice, I wanted you to tell a little bit more about how you help businesses at Finch Global. So that connection between culture and helping companies grow internationally is quite a strong link. So you tell us a little bit about what it is that you're actually doing for companies at the moment.
Yeah, so we do business development, but I think from our conversation, people can understand that culture plays a big part in that. So what we do, we tend to work with companies either here, Latin America, or we're working with companies in Kazakhstan as well. We identify, evaluate, and pursue opportunities. So we'll analyze, what is your product or service. Like I said, we tend to be in the service industry, and then what can you offer in another country? Have you got something that can benefit clients in that country, can add value to what they have? Then we'll do market research for companies. And work with them to develop a market entry strategy to go into a new market, working with our network of partners. So we have partners in Kazakhstan, Bolivia, and just recently in the United States as well. And we'll work with these partners who have local knowledge, because local knowledge is key to success. And we will work with them to identify, either work with directly with the partner or identify somebody that they can partner with. And we usually encourage clients to go in with local partners, and then we'll work, depending on whether they just want to be linked up with a partner, or then work with us to develop the market in that new country.
Okay.
And vice versa, companies coming here, we develop market and looking for partners for them in the UK as well.
It's really interesting because in the past I've had conversations for Ducaro and for Ducaro clients around entering new markets, and that whole discussion around, do we just go into a new market, set up an office, hire people and get going, or do we partner with someone? It'd be good to hear from you some of the, I suppose, pros and cons, because there must be some disadvantages of partner investors coming in. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you're running a business where you have, a large, if you're selling products possibly, and you've got a large market, you can do direct market entry. We haven't personally worked with companies doing direct market entry, so I wouldn't like to give too much of an opinion on that. We recommend working with local partners. One, because a lot of countries and companies have local content regulations, so that you can't go in and enter a country directly. You need to work with a local company, and you need to employ local people as well, and which we are big advocates of, because you have talent in country. In most places, there's no need to be bringing in a lot of expats, and you'll often find that local employees will be just as effective. You can, take them to your headquarters, train them if required, but there's plenty of talent. Don't underestimate the talent there are some countries that, possibly don't have the talent you're looking for, but I would say look in country first, and don't underestimate what's available.
Amazing. What I've done is I've put a link to Alice's business in a comment thread. So if you're interested in international market entry or anything like that, feel free to check out the website and get in touch with Alice if you're watching this now or later on. Oh, you're absolutely welcome. So I mean, that's final kind of touch point around culture. What are some of the, I guess, worst situations you've come across where someone's completely misinterpreted a culture, Alice?
I have so many examples I could do, but there's some simple ones that I would highlight. Just simple things like the phrases we use, like the use of idioms, for example, or even just something like saying as soon as possible. So when in the UK and most English-speaking countries, I think probably, in my mind, if I say to somebody, I need this as soon as possible, I mean urgently. I need this really quickly, and I need it's a priority. But I have had several cases, and this isn't just a one instance that I would say, well, maybe it was just that person. But I've had several examples of people misinterpreting that. So I now clarify when I say as soon as possible. I then, if it's somebody that's not from the UK, I will clarify. By that I mean that this is really urgent, or this is a priority, or a time that I need this by Friday, close of business or something. Because in several times I've had people will think, they interpret as soon as possible to mean as soon as you are available, as soon as you have time. And that may mean, well, I'm really busy this week, so I'm not going to have time until next week. So you said to me as soon as possible. That
Yeah.
is
And
yeah,
possible is
again,
subjective, isn't it? It's like, well, when it's
exactly,
possible, it's up
exactly.
to me to decide when it's
Um,
possible.
Absolutely. And it's again, culture is all about perception. It's how you see things, but understanding and always being aware that other people may see things differently to you. And if you're aware of that, then you don't need to change the way you think. You just need to accept that other people may be thinking, interpreting this differently, and use, if you're aware of that, then you clarify things just to make sure that you both understand what you personally are meaning. And if some vice versa, if somebody's saying something to you, just clarify, what exactly do you mean by that? Another example, recently when I was living in Kazakhstan, um, the smile.
I love this one.
I had always I've taken pride in the fact that I feel that I can adapt, and maybe we're all overconfident. I thought I adapt well to cultures. I'm very accepting of different cultures, and very respectful of cultural differences. And I've always thought that if you smile at somebody, even if you don't speak their language, you can build a bridge. A smile tends, and it is generally the case in most cultures. You can gain a lot of just a nice friendly smile. But if you go to some areas of Kazakhstan, where particularly Aberdeen where we were, the first couple of weeks I was there, I felt that, and I hope nobody from Kazakhstan listening, because I love the Kazakhs, but I found people quite hostile, and it was strange to me. I'd never had that experience in a new culture, and I really wasn't very comfortable with it. Didn't feel that I was getting on well at all. I didn't speak Russian, which wasn't helping me, or Kazakh. But people were really quite rude when I smiled, and I couldn't understand it. I was so confused. And then a Russian friend said to me, "You do realize there's a saying in Russian, which is a smile for no reason." And I'm maybe wrong with this. But a smile without reason is a sign of stupidity. I thought, oh, right. Okay. So if you smile at somebody that you don't know, they think you're stupid, basically. So to me, suddenly I changed from interpreting what I was doing through my own cultural lens and seeing it through somebody else's cultural lens, and thought, oh, wow, I'm actually being really not very friendly. I'm being rude to them. And if you look at pictures, like family pictures in Kazakhstan, they tend to be quite serious. That's a sign of respect, is you're serious, you don't smile. So I adapted my behavior. So I would, unless I knew the person well, I wouldn't go in with a big grin. And, because even like I would go into shops and be like, oh, hello, good morning.
Oh gosh.
Hello.
I would be
With
the
a little
same.
bit
Oh
back on
gosh,
it.
I would be the
It's
same.
the, it's the, it's the fly on the wall. Try and I loved, I've done some LLP training. I love that aspect of, the three perspectives. Look at what you're doing from the other person's perspective. Look at it from, the fly on the wall. What does it look like to other people? And if if you start looking at it from somebody else and think, well, this is how they're interpreting what I'm doing. Okay, so maybe I need to change what I'm doing. And also vice versa. I've said to Kazakhs coming here, smile. You're apparently for the Olympics, they actually trained people that were working in the Olympics in Russia to smile because it wasn't normal for them.
Culture.
So yeah, if you're in customer service and you're working with expats in Kazakhstan, I said to them, smile, it'll help you a lot. And vice versa, coming here, smile. It's what we expect of people, is a nice, friendly smile.
Yeah. Oh, that was such a good story. Thank you so much, Alice. I've enjoyed having you on the show, and thank you for everyone who's thank you to everyone who's been watching and people commenting and so on. Thanks so much. This is my, I guess, last presence on LinkedIn this year. I am going to switch off until the new year. I might lurk, but I won't like say much.
Enjoy. You deserve a break.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining me, Alice, and have a wonderful Christmas and New Year,
You
everyone.
too. Happy Christmas, and happy Christmas, everybody.
Same. Bye.